They killed my family. I went to the most dangerous man in New York for revenge. He agreed. On one condition, I become his wife.
Welcome to Twisted Fame, where the drama is real and the stories are wild. Support the channel by liking, subscribing, and commenting. Let's dive into today's story.
My world was not just broken, it was erased. They came in the silence that comes before the storm. Men with faces like stone and eyes like black ice. They did not speak, they did not ask, they just took. The sound was the worst part, the loud cracking noises that tore through the peaceful evening, forever staining it with violence and loss. I hid in a closet, smelling the faint scent of my mother's perfume on the coats. My heart beating so loud I was sure they would hear it. I heard my father's last words, a defiant shout, then nothing. I heard my mother's scream cut short. I heard my little brother's favorite toy music box playing a twisted tune amidst the horror. Then silence. A silence so complete it was louder than the guns. I stayed there for hours until the sun rose and the world kept turning as if nothing had happened. But my world had stopped. I emerged into a nightmare. The home that was my sanctuary was now a tomb. The walls, witnesses to a tragedy that would haunt me forever. The police came, they asked questions, they gave sympathetic looks, but their words were empty. We are doing all we can. The Volkov Bratva is a ghost we cannot catch. I knew then that justice would not come from them. Justice was a luxury for the normal world, and I had been thrust into the shadows. There was only one name that whispered through the underworld. A name that even the Volkovs feared, Ares. They called him the god of war, the king of ashes, the man who owned New York City. He was a myth, a legend, a monster parents used to scare their children. But he was my only hope. Finding him was like trying to find a specific shadow in the dark. I used the last of my family's money to buy information from men in smoky bars and back alleys. They all looked at me with pity or lust, but they gave me what? I wanted an address, a time, a password. His fortress was a tower of black. Glass and steel, a monument to his power. It pierced the clouds as if challenging heaven itself. My legs trembled as I walked towards the entrance, my heart a wild, frantic bird trapped in the cage of my ribs. The men at the door were not men. They were mountains. In suits, their eyes scanning me, seeing a threat in my trembling form. They frisked me, their hands impersonal and cold. They took my phone, my ID, the last remnants of my old identity. I was led through halls so silent, I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. The marble floors reflected my terrified face back. At me, a ghost walking towards her own damnation. The doors to his office were heavier than anything I had ever felt. They opened without a sound, and then I saw him. He did not sit at a desk. He lounged in a high-backed chair silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling window. The entire city sprawled at his feet like a conquered kingdom. He turned slowly, and his eyes found mine. They were not the eyes of a man. They were a storm, gray and turbulent and full of a terrifying ancient knowledge. He looked at me, and I felt seen in a way. I never had. Every secret, every fear, every broken piece of my soul was laid bare under his gaze. He spoke, and his voice was low, a rumble of distant thunder that vibrated in my bones. What does a lost little mouse hope to find in the lion's den? I forced my voice to work, forcing the words past the paralyzing fear in my throat. They killed my family, the Volkov Bratva. I want you to kill them. I want you to make them suffer. He was silent for a long moment, just watching me, dissecting me. And what possible currency could a little mouse like you have that would interest me? I have money. He laughed, a short, dry sound that held no humor. Not enough. I have my life. Your life, he said, rising from his chair, is already mine the moment you walked through. That door, I decide if you leave here breathing. He moved towards me, not like a man, but like a predator, a tiger stalking its prey. He circled me, his presence a physical weight, pushing the air from my lungs. I have a counteroffer, little mouse. A proposal. I will burn the Volkov Empire to the ground. I will salt the earth where they stood. I will deliver their leader's heart to you in a box. But you will become my wife. The word hung in the air between us, absurd, monstrous, impossible. Wife. It was not a question of marriage. It was a question of ownership, a brand. My mind screamed 1,000 protests. This was insanity, a descent into a darker hell than the one I was already in. But then I saw their faces. My family's faces smiling in my memory. I saw the blood on the walls. I felt the hollow ache of a future stolen. And I knew I would walk into any hell for vengeance. I looked up into the storm of his eyes, my own filled with a fire he had not yet seen. Deal. The single word was a whisper, but it echoed in the vast, silent room. A covenant with the devil, A slow, dangerous smile touched his lips. Good. Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Kane. The wedding was a transaction. There was no white dress, no walking down the aisle, no father to give me away. He was gone. I wore black, a color of mourning for my old life, a color of the shadows I now inhabited. The ceremony took place in a small, cold office with a man who was not a priest, but a lawyer. His words were legalities, not blessings. Do you, Alessia Rossi, take this man, Aries Kane, to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. My voice was flat. He placed a ring on my finger, a band of platinum set with a diamond so large it felt like a way to shackle. It was cold against my skin. He did not wear a ring. He took me to his penthouse, my new home, my new prison. It was the most beautiful place. I had ever seen, all sharp angles and minimalist, furniture and art that looked like it cost more than my childhood home. But it had no soul, no warmth. It was a museum, and I was its newest exhibit. This is where you will live. You will not leave without my permission. You will not contact anyone. From your past, you are a symbol. Now my symbol. His rules were simple and absolute. I was a trophy. A statement to his enemies, look what I can possess. The first few days were a blur of silence and solitude. I wandered the vast rooms, tracing the patterns. In the marble, feeling the chill of the glass windows. I would stand for hours looking down at the city. The people like tiny ants living their normal lives a world away from my gilded cage. He was rarely home, and when he was a ghost moving through the halls. He would work in his study, the low murmur of his voice on phone calls, the meaning of which I could only guess. Sometimes, he would have business associates over, men with hard eyes and expensive watches. They would look at me with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. The little mouse, the purchased bride. I learned to be invisible, to stay in my room, to move through the house without making a sound. But he always knew. Where I was, I could feel his awareness of me like a physical touch, a constant pressure in the air. One evening, I was in the library, my fingers trailing over the spines of leather-bound books. I never intended to read. I felt his presence before I saw him. He stood in the doorway watching me. Do you read, little mouse? His voice made me jump. Sometimes I managed to say. He walked into the room, his gaze sweeping over the shelves. This is all for show, he said. No one actually reads them. They are just part of the illusion of civility. What do you read then? I asked, surprising myself with the question. He looked at me, a flicker of something unreadable in his stormy eyes. People, he said. I read people. Their intentions, their fears, their weaknesses. It is the only text that matters. He stepped closer and I instinctively stepped back, my hips hitting the bookshelf. He noticed the flinch, a subtle tightening around his mouth. I am not going to hurt you, Alessia, he said. Not unless you give me a reason. The wife of Aries Kane must be untouchable. I am not your wife, I whispered, the rebellion rising in me despite my fear. Not really. Aren't you? He said, his voice dangerously soft. The law says you are. The ring on your finger says you are. And I say you are. He reached out and I froze, but he only tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. His knuckles, brushing my cheek. The touch was brief, but it sent a jolt through my system. It was not violent. It was possessive. Get some rest, he said, turning away. We have a function tomorrow night. You will need your strength. He left me there in the library, my heart pounding, my cheek still burning from his touch. I was not just a prisoner in his house. I was becoming a prisoner in my own mind. And the most terrifying part was the tiny traitorous thought that his touch had not been entirely unpleasant. The function was a charity gala, a sea of glittering lies and false smiles. He bought me a dress, a gown of deep midnight blue that felt like liquid against my skin. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever worn. You look presentable, he said, his eyes giving away nothing as he appraised me. It was not a compliment, it was the assessment. At the gala, he was a different man. Not Aries the monster, but Aries Kane the philanthropist, the business titan. He was charming, his smile practiced and perfect. He shook hands and made small talk, but his hand was always on the small of my back, a constant reminder of his ownership, at anchor in the swirling crowd. Stay close to me, he had murmured as we entered. I did, I played my part. I smiled, I nodded, I was the beautiful silent wife. I saw the way people looked at him with a mixture of fear and respect, and the way they looked at me with pity or envy. They did not see the cage, they only saw the gold. A man, a senator with 2 white teeth and wandering hands, leaned in too, close his breath, smelling of expensive whiskey. And what is it you do, my dear, besides look so breathtaking? Before I could form a response, Aries was there, his presence suddenly immense and dark. He slid his arm around my waist, his grip firm. She graces my life. "Senator," he said, his voice pleasant, but his eyes like chips of ice. "That is a full-time occupation, I assure you." The senator paled and stammered an apology, quickly moving away. Aries looked down at me, his face unreadable. "You do not have to tolerate that from anyone," he said quietly. "No one." In that moment, I did not feel like a possession. I felt protected. It was a dangerous feeling. Later that night, I had the nightmare again. The guns, the silence, the music box. I woke up screaming, drenched in cold sweat, the sound tearing from my throat. My door opened before the echo had faded. He stood there, silhouetted by the hall light, not in silk. Pajamas, but in sweatpants, as if he had not been sleeping. He did not speak, he just walked to my bed and sat on the edge, his weight dipping the mattress. He reached out and I flinched, but he just picked up the glass of water from my nightstand and handed it to me. His silence was more comforting than any words could have been. I drank the water, my hand shaking. He took the glass back, and then his thumb gently wiped a tear from my cheek. I had not even realized I was crying. The touch was so unexpectedly tender, it broke something open inside me. "Go back to sleep, little mouse," he said, his voice a low rumble in the dark. "No one will harm you here." He stayed until my breathing evened out, until the tremors stopped. When I woke in the morning, he was gone, but the glass of water was refilled. And on the nightstand was a small, simple music box. It was not the one from my childhood that was lost forever, but it was similar. I opened it, and a soft, gentle melody filled the room. A melody that held no horror, only peace. He was remembering the details of my nightmare. The monster was paying attention. The gifts started after that. Small things, a book of poetry by my favorite author, a scarf the exact color of the summer sky. I had told him I missed a single, perfect blueberry muffin from the bakery near my old apartment. He would leave them for me without a word on the kitchen counter, on my desk in the library. It was confusing, this side of him. It did not fit with the man who had coldly proposed a marriage of vengeance. I started to look for the cracks in his armor, the small human moments, the way he rubbed his temples. After a long phone call, the way he always saved the business section of the newspaper, for me knowing I liked the crosswords, the way his eyes sometimes looked tired, and old, holding centuries of secrets. One evening, he came home late. There was a fresh cut on his knuckles and a dark energy radiated from him. He poured a glass of whiskey and stood by the window staring out at his kingdom. "The Volkovs," he said without turning around. "They were warned to stay away from the docks. They did not listen." He finally looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "Their warehouse is ash tonight." A message. "Is this what you wanted, Alessia?" he asked, his voice quiet. "Is this the vengeance you dreamed of?" I looked at him, at the blood on his hand, at the weariness in his posture, and I thought of the hollow feeling in my chest. I thought it would feel different, I whispered. He nodded slowly, a shared understanding passing between us. "It always does," he said. "The fantasy of revenge is sweet, but the taste of ashes is always bitter." He finished his whiskey. "Come," he said. "There is the Italian place you would like." And for the first time, I did not feel like I was being taken somewhere. I felt like I was being invited. The cage was still there, but the door was opening, and I was not sure if I wanted to fly out or stay inside. The Italian place was small and family-run, tucked away on a quiet street. The air smelled of garlic and baking bread. It was warm and real, a world away from the sterile penthouse. The owner knew Aries, he called him, Mr. Kane, and treated him with a respectful familiarity that was not based on fear. He showed us to a quiet booth in the back. Aries ordered for both of us in fluent Italian. He saw my surprise. My mother was from Sicily. He said simply, a rare, unprompted piece of his history. For a moment, he was not a mafia kingpin. He was just a man having dinner. We ate, and we talked not about business or vengeance, but about simple things. I told him about wanting to be a painter when I was a child. He told me about a dog he had as a boy, a stray he found on the streets. It was the most normal hour of my life since my family died, and it was spent with the most dangerous man in the city. It felt fragile and precious. As we left the restaurant, he placed his hand on the small of my back again, but this time it felt different, not like ownership, but like connection. It was then that the black SUV screeched to a halt. The world slowed down. The doors flew open and men poured out, their faces hard, their intentions clear in their drawn weapons. Volkov. Aries moved faster than thought. He was a blur of motion. He shoved me hard, sending me stumbling back towards the restaurant doorway, his body shield between me and the danger. "Get down!" His roar was not one of fear, but of pure, unleashed fury. He already had his gun in his hand, the metal glinting under the streetlights. The night exploded. The sound was deafening, a rapid cracking that shattered the peaceful evening. I crouched behind a concrete pillar, my hands over my ears, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. I watched him. He was not just fighting. He was conducting a symphony of violence. He moved with a terrifying grace, dodging behind. A car returning fire, his aim precise and lethal. He was not trying to hide, he was trying to eliminate. 1, 2, 3 of the men fell. But there were more. A shot ricocheted off the pillar near my head, spraying chips of concrete. Ares' head snapped towards me, and in that split second of distraction, a bullet grazed his arm. I saw him flinch, but he didn't make a sound, his focus immediately returning to the threat. He is hurt. The thought was clear and sharp amidst the panic. He is hurt because of me. A strange courage ignited in my gut, a fierce protective surge. I would not let him die for me. I saw a shard of broken mirror from a shattered car window near my feet. As another man advanced on Ares' flank, I grabbed the shard and threw it as hard as I could. It was not a weapon, but it was a distraction. The man flinched, turning towards the movement, and that was all the opening. Ares needed a single shot, and the man dropped. In the sudden relative silence, the last man scrambled back into the SUV, and it sped away, leaving tire marks and bodies behind. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and copper. Ares stood panting, his gun, still raised, his eyes scanning the area for more threats. Then he turned to me. His eyes were wild, blazing with a primal fire I had never seen. He crossed the distance in 3 long strides, his hands grabbing my shoulders, his gaze frantically scanning my body. "Are you hurt? Tell me you are not hurt." His voice was raw, stripped bare of all its usual control. It was filled with a terror that was entirely for me. "I'm okay," I whispered, my own voice shaking. "I'm okay. Ares." He pulled me to his chest, crushing me against him. I could feel the hard pound of his heart against my cheek, the tension in every muscle of his body. He buried his face in my hair, his breath hot against my scalp. "I could have lost you." The whisper was a vow, a prayer, a confession. He held me like that for a long time in the middle of the carnage, as sirens wailed in the distance. In that moment, the last walls around my heart crumbled to dust. The monster had risked his life for me. The king had shown his fear. And the little mouse was no longer afraid of the lion. She was in love with him. He did not let go of my hand the entire car ride home. His grip was tight, almost painful, as if I might disappear if he loosened his hold. Back in the penthouse, the facade was gone. He was not Ares, the untouchable god. He was just a man who had almost lost something he had come to value. He paced in front of the fireplace, the cut on, his arm hastily cleaned, but still oozing a little blood. "This changes nothing," he said, but he was lying mostly to himself. "They have crossed a line, they have touched what is mine." He stopped pacing and looked at me, his eyes dark and intense. "What is mine he protects." He led me to the bathroom and sat. Me on the closed toilet lid he tended to the small cuts on my arms from the concrete splinters. His touch was infinitely gentle, a contrast to the violence of the night. When he was done, he stood there just looking at me. "I should send you away," he murmured. "It is the only way to keep you safe." "No," I said, the word firm and clear. His eyes snapped to mine. "This is my war, Alessia. My world of darkness, I dragged you into it, and I am staying in it," I said, standing up to face him. "I am not the little mouse hiding in the closet anymore. You made me into something else. You made me into your wife." The air crackled between us. He reached out his hand, cupping my cheek, his thumb stroking my skin. "Do you have any idea?" He whispered, his voice rough, "what you have done to me. I was empty before you, a king of a hollow kingdom. You walked in with your fire and your pain, and you filled the silence. You were a deal, a transaction, but you became a necessity. I cannot breathe when you are not in the room. I do not want my freedom, Ares," I whispered, leaning into his touch. "I want you." A low sound escaped him, part groan, part surrender. He leaned his forehead against mine. His eyes closed. "My love," he breathed the words, a sacred secret. And then he kissed me. It was not a kiss of possession or conquest. It was a kiss of devotion, of two shattered souls finding their missing pieces in each other. It was gentle and desperate, and full of a truth words could never hold. The last barrier between us vanished that night. I learned the map of scars on his body. He learned the landscape of fears in my heart. We did not make a deal, we made a covenant. The following weeks were a transformation. The war with the Volkovs reached its climax, but now I was not a bystander. I was his partner. He shared his strategies with me. He valued my insight, my perception of people. The little mouse who saw the world clearly was now the queen advising her king. The final raid happened on a night thick with fog. I waited, not pacing in fear but sitting, calmly in his study, surrounded by the smell of his books and his cologne. I knew he would come back to me. The phone rang. His voice was steady, but I could hear the finality in it. "It is done, little mouse. Your family is avenged. The debt is paid." When he walked through the door, he looked different. The weight of the vengeance he had carried for me was gone from his shoulders, but a new tension was there, a fear. He stood before me and took my hands. "It is over, Alessia. The contract between us is fulfilled. You are free," he said, the words releasing me from our bond, setting the bird free from its cage. "If you wish to leave, I will let you go. You will have everything you need. A new life far from here, far from me." He was giving me the choice, the one thing he had taken from me in the beginning. My heart did not hesitate. I walked to him. I placed my hands on his chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart under my palms. "I do not want my freedom. I want the man who killed for me. I want the man who protects me. I want the man who brought me a music box to silence my nightmares. I want you." The fear in his eyes melted away, replaced by a love so deep and so fierce it took my breath away. He shook his head, a true, genuine smile spreading across his face, the first I had ever seen. "No, my love," he whispered. "You own this city, and you own me." He kissed me again. A kiss of promise of a future written not in blood but in light. He was the monster and he was my savior. He was the king and I was his queen. Our love was born in danger and forged in obsession. It was twisted and it was famous. And it was ours forever. If this dark romance captured your soul, you belong in the shadows with us. Subscribe to Twisted Fame and hit the bell, because the obsession is just beginning. Our next story of dangerous love and deadly secrets awaits. Until then, remember, in our twisted world, love is the most powerful weapon of all.